It was evening, right after nap time, when Moon awoke out of his slumber. He was confused. It was still dark, and cramped wherever he was. Why was he awake and not a sun half? According to his eternal clock, it wasn't nap time. It took the machine a few minutes to finally realize he was inside a crate. Immediately he panicked. Was he being scrapped? What did he do to deserve this? He began banging his fists against the wood, grunting and groaning in fear, until finally a familiar voice called out, "Hey, stop that." That voice. It was Brian. Moon spouted angry nonsense that was still in accordance to his profanity filter. Despite the awful circumstances he found himself in, but eventually even the daycare attendant gave up on childish things like fighting a battle he would not win. So he merely returned to simply mumbling curses, which was Brian's cue to speak up. "Hey, you knocked on the crate's wood. You ready to listen now?" he barked. The animatronic didn't reply, but lowered the volume of his complaining. "Good boy," mused the day shift guard. "We went into some legal trouble. Apparently the artistic depiction of you, well, they're a little too unrepresentative." Moon's head spun. He found that his advertisements were very much accurate to his appearance. "The higher-ups have decided to change the advertisements with you. You're going on a little photo shooting." The daycare attendant shifted. And he made Brian promise 4 times that indeed he wasn't being scrapped. In the meantime, Brian lifted the crate onto a roller and began pushing Moon towards the delivery exit. And for some time, it was quiet. Eventually, Moon's box was placed on something dark and cold, which soon began to vibrate. A delivery truck. Honestly, Moon didn't know how long the drive took. He had placed himself into a limited sleep mode. But what he did notice was that the box was being lifted once more. After some time, he was being carted again. His head spun unintentionally as he reactivated himself in anticipation. Meanwhile, you sat in your photo studio, going through your advertising backgrounds. You were a talented photographer, having worked yourself from adult photography up to the big guys, corporate advertisement. Now you not only made double what you did before, you also didn't need to feel jealous of the people who were doing those lewd acts as you took professional pictures of them. However, a week ago you read an email inquiring of your services. A photoshoot with a Fazbear Entertainment animatronic. As an avid Fazbear fan, you immediately jumped to the occasion. So you made ample room on your schedule for this valued client. Of course, this wasn't the first time you had Fazbear animatronics in your studio. What you didn't know was the fact that you weren't chosen for your talent, but for the prize. Thankfully, you didn't know that. Some bored-looking fellow who spoke in grunts had placed a wooden box in the middle of your studio. He left after signing a few papers. Somewhat bored, you read the instruction manual delivered to you with the animatronic. Apparently, it needed to be dark in the studio for the machine to function as intended. A daycare attendant model. So far, you had only photo shootings with the 3 glam rocks. So far, you only had photo shootings with the 4 glam rocks. Freddy and Roxy were a delight. Just Chica and Monty were making a fuss. Chica couldn't hold still, and whenever you looked away, shoved her face into something vaguely food-shaped. You had a collection of sweets in your office for cranky children. And Monty? He wanted to make his own poses, and only his own ones. So that took quite the convincing to actually get there. The manual specifically stated the split personalities of the animatronic, originally designed to be called Eclipse. But something with their AI is super screwy, and the sun and moon personalities eventually took over. Problem: Eclipse is the most mature out of them, leading to the entire Eclipse series to be turned into what were now the daycare attendants with a sun and a moon mode. Eclipse being suppressed behind a couple of .exe files that were always active to prevent confusion due to an accidental activation. In other words, you would be dealing with Moon today, and only Moon. With a sigh of annoyance, you closed the blinds of your studio, turned all the spotlights to flash, and made sure your smartphone flashlight was functioning. Once you were done, you pressed an ear against the crate. You could hear the quiet rustling of working electronics and cooling systems. You knocked against the wood. "Hello?" The machine hissed. "Very friendly," you noted dryly. "You can come out. It's dark." Inside the box, Moon narrowed his eyes.
"I choose to trust you, because I want to get out of this wretched box."
You shrugged and took a step away, as Moon lunged himself against the crate's wall. It immediately fell open. With the force behind his breakout, though, he fell right into your arms. Your eyes met, and the machine's flat face turned upside down.
"If you say, 'Oh, looks like you're already falling for me,' I will refuse to cooperate."
You snorted, and his red glowing eyes narrowed into tiny slits.
"You're thinking it,"
he grumbled. "Only because you said it." He looked away.
"Besides, I'm quite heavy. How can you hold me so easily?"
Are you getting shy on me? Already?
"No!"
Moon quickly took a step away from you, crossing his arms.
"Just curious, Miss Photographer."
Scratching the back of your head, you blushed. "I can't afford a helper to set up my equipment, so I do it all myself. It's quite the workout." You pulled away the sleeve of your arm and flexed. "See?" His eyes flew open. The lower eyelid of his left eye twitched.
"Mommy."
He stuttered, so quietly you practically didn't hear it. "Huh? Did you say something?" He crossed his arms and scoffed.
"Nothing. Can we please get started? You're embarrassing me."
I mean, we can. I just need you to come over here real quick." He followed your gesture, finding something that looked very similar to the surgical table of the protective dome. A machine inside parts and services of the Pizzaplex, used for automatic repairs and maintenance. It being familiar made him relax just a little bit.
"And for what, exactly?"
I may not see all of it, but I'm pretty sure you're dirty.
"A dirty boy?"
He asked, offended. You blinked. Well, yeah, you are a dirty boy. You furrowed your brows, slightly shaking your head. You're a little weirded out. Reluctantly, Moon lied down on the table, folding his hands in his lap, twiddling his thumbs as you got your cloth and sponge ready, as well as mixing a few drops of Roxy's nail polish cleaner into 2 cups of water. With a soft sponge, you then gingerly rubbed over his shell, starting with his arms and hands. Grime stains that you couldn't remove, probably from spilled fizzy faz, and puke you got rid of by using a cotton ball that was soaked in cleaning alcohol. Moon looked at your work wide-eyed. Even in the darkness, your touches were mesmerizingly gentle, soft, even if it was performed blindly. He stared, as wide-eyed as his static face allowed him. Cleaning by photographers always looked and felt so great. So much better than the quick rub-down he got once per week from Brian. Honestly, Moon was glad to be offline 50% of the time when Brian cleaned him. Not that the day shift guard was gross or creepy when cleaning. He just was thorough and cold. The daycare attendant may be an unfeeling metal husk, but that didn't mean he wouldn't want to be cared for. Your soft fingers, despite your rough exterior, danced across his metal and plastic shell, giving him warmth that he normally never felt. He wasn't built to interact with the brats during awake time, nor was he built to be a nurturing guardian during nap time. He was made to enforce the rules, so he never experienced true friendship. And yet, what he truly desired in this moment was beyond his programming. A desire, a human one, that undoubtedly activated his profanity filters, and yet he wanted it. The finger slid down his hip, and he gasped. Of course he didn't really breathe. These kind of reactions were programmed into him to appear more human, like the subtle movements of chest and shoulders to imitate breathing, or the audible little inhale he did before speaking, even though no air was being breathed in, nor were there lungs to speak of. Your fingers stopped at the spot where his belly button would be if he had been human. You tilted your head. For you, this experience wasn't as intense, of course. You were just doing your job. As you felt your fingernails scratch over a stain that once was a cake crumb from a birthday party. The scratching made his eyes glitch a little as his vision became blurry for a moment. His back arched ever so slightly, just enough for him to feel relief, just subtle enough for you not to notice. In a way, he was glad that Brian didn't clean him like this. A beautiful, strong woman such as herself. It just felt more appropriate for this. It felt right. And he wanted more, even though you haven't even reached his face yet. His face, where he was the most sensitive. He wondered if it would feel this intense if your studio wasn't dark. Well, then again, he'd be sun at that point. He'd probably ruin it. His eyelids twitched. Using tweezers, you were using an alcohol-soaked cotton ball to gently rub over his eyes. His fingers shook. Moon felt every sensation, every millimeter, every tiny droplet. In a remarkable intensity he never felt before. It was orgasmic. And he was so glad he didn't make a fuss at you. Knowing would have hurt your feelings, would have changed the entire feeling of this silent exchange. And then you stopped. He blinked, confused. All done, you said. Moon jolted up. His vents were in full blast. Since when? By the way, do you have a heating issue? You asked casually. You've been shooting hot air in my face ever since I reached your tummy.
No, Miss Photographer.
Moon wasn't sure if it was his imagination, his deep desire to hear these words manifesting into reality, for the sheer amount of his will coming out of your mouth. But for a fleeting moment, he felt as if you smirked at him, winked, and said, "Call me Mommy, my little baby boy."
Thank you to the people who are supporting me on Ko-fi. You guys are keeping me alive.
Special thanks to my lovely darlings, aka channel members, Cat Cove, KI Biz, BitBit, Zings X3, Melofia, Lavender Cheese, Muffin, Simp, Hella, Nexurist, AJ Anime Girl, and Hopeful.